Hi, I'm Lizzie Newcombe and today I'll be showing you how to make your very own Christmas wreath, one of my favourite things to do at this time of year. To start, you'll need a 14-inch wreath ring, a reel wire, and you'll need a pair of scissors and some string as well. I've also got some other bits of loose wire and we'll be using these to attach the pine cones and things a bit later on. To begin, I'm going to attach the wreath ring to the piece of the bind wire. I'm going to leave a little bit of a longer length on the wreath ring. We're going to use that later on to attach the moss and to secure it. And now we're going to start adding the moss to the frame. You want to grab a handful of moss about this kind of size, maybe about a little bit less, and we're going to attach it to the wreath frame. We're just going to pop it on the top. You don't have to worry too much about adding it to the back. We're just going to focus on the top part of the wreath at the moment. And we're going to use the bind wire to take it round and secure it nicely onto the wreath frame. We're going to go around a couple of times and you want to make sure that it's quite nice and compact. We're now going to add another handful of moss to the wreath ring again. And again, exactly the same thing as what we did previously. We're going to keep taking the bind wire around the wreath ring. And we're going to do this until we cover the entire frame with moss. Now I'm going to add in the last bit of moss onto the frame. We're just going to take the wire around again, just make sure it's really nice and secure. And then when you get to the end, or where you first started, you should be able to find the piece of wire. And we're going to give it a bit of a twist, and then that will hold the wire nicely onto the frame and keep everything intact, ready for the next step. So the next step, we're going to want to cut the foliage, and we're going to need to cut it into a few different lengths so we can use it in different placements around the wreath. So we've got this beautiful blue spruce. I'm going to start off by cutting some of this, and then we're going to add in some lovely festive bits later on. The lengths, you're going to want to cut them to be about this kind of length, especially for the outer edge, because that will then create a lovely fluffy effect. And we can then cut some smaller bits like this, and then we could probably do with some middle-sized pieces as well. So I'm going to prepare some foliage to add to the wreath. I've also got some really beautiful olive. I just love the texture of the olive, especially with the berries on. It's just really beautiful. And it's also a slightly different colour to the blue spruce. And I think that combining the two different colours and textures works really well in this kind of design. I've also got some berried eucalyptus. Most florists will probably have this at Christmas time. So I'm going to cut some bits of the eucalyptus as well. Same sort of length as the blue spruce. I've also got this really beautiful asparagus fern. This is just going to help create more of a fluffy effect in the foliage. The spruce is beautiful, but it's quite hard, and then if we add in a bit of the asparagus fern, it just helps create that lovely sort of fluffy movement that we want to have in the Christmas wreath. As well as the gorgeous greenery that we're going to use, I've also got some beautiful textured flowers as well. We've got this beautiful sanguisorba in a lovely burgundy colour. We've also got some limonium, which is going to help add a pop of colour to our Christmas wreath. I've got some beautiful rose hips. Most people might be able to find these out foraging or in people's gardens, so just have a look and see what you've got at home. It's quite nice to use things from your garden if you can, or from a friend's garden. And we've also got some hypericum as well, which is just going to add that pop of festive colour. Just like we did with the greenery, I'm going to prepare some of the flowers that we're going to include in the Christmas wreath. So here I'm just cutting some of the sanguisorba to the right length. And I'm going to do the same with the limonium and the rose hips and the hypericum too. So I've now prepared all of the foliage and the flowers that we're going to use in the wreath today. The first step is to use some of the blue spruce. And I've also taken some of the needles off of the lower leaves here just by pulling them off like that. And we're doing that because we can then angle the stems into the moss frame, and that's just going to help keep the stems nice and moist throughout the time it's on the door. So I'm going to add one nice branch on the outside, one in the middle, and then one on the inside. And we're going to do the same thing again with the technique until we begin to see the shape come together. At this point, I'm then going to take the reel wire around the frame again, just like how we did it with the moss, and that's going to hold the stems nice and securely in the wreath. I'm also going to add in a little bit of the different foliages that we're using. So I've got a bit of the berried eucalyptus, a bit of the asparagus fern, and a bit of the olive. And just adding these beautiful textures in is going to create a really lovely effect on the wreath. So I've put those stems into the moss. I'm then going to take the wire around the stems again a couple of times just to hold them in nice and securely. We're doing the same thing again, so spruce into the moss frame. This time I'm going to add in a little bit of flower. So I'm going to use some of the beautiful sanguisorba, maybe some of the limonium as well, just to add a pop of colour, and some of the rose hips too. So these are all going into the moss. And we'll take the wire around again just to secure it nicely. I'm going to add in a little bit more of the textured foliage, maybe a bit of the limonium again. Because when we're putting this together, we want to make sure that the colour balance is just right and the placements are balanced as well. So just bear that in mind when you're adding your flowers into the wreath. I finished most of the wreath. I've just got one last piece to add here, but before we do that, we're going to attach a piece of string, which is how we're going to hang it on the door. So with this, I'm just going to tie a knot first. You could use string or you could use ribbon if you like, and then we're going to take it around the wreath frame and then loop it through, and then we've got somewhere nice and stable to hang it from. Now we've done that, we can add in the last bit of greenery to finish off the wreath. So I've got the spruce, exactly the same as what we've been doing to create the rest of the wreath. Take the wire round. But what you want to do when you get to this bit is fold the other bits of the greenery back. Continue to put the spruce into the frame, like so. And then we'll take the wire round again. Now with the wire we can cut that off, and what I do is I just take it round the wreath ring a couple more times, and then on the back of the wreath you can just tuck it under the copper wreath frame that we started off with, take it around that a few times, just make sure that it's nice and stable and secure, and then bend it back into the moss frame. Now we've got a couple of other decorations that we're going to add. I've decided to go for some lovely pine cones, and I've also got some dried oranges as well, just because I think the colour is so lovely. So to secure your pine cones onto the wreath, you want to first take a pine cone and then one of these green wires. You could also use some of this wire, but these ones are a little bit better because they're a bit stronger, so it's easier to push it into the wreath frame. We take the wire round the pine cone to the other side, give it a twist, and then we bring the two ends of the wire together, and then this then gets pushed through the foliage, through the moss, and then you should be able to tuck it back into the moss on the other side. So So I'm going to add in one more pine cone, so I've got 3 in total. It's up to you where you want to place them. I'm going to put mine at even spaces. You can put them more of an asymmetrical placement if you like. Just depends on the design you're going for. Next, I've got these beautiful dried oranges. And with these, you want to take a wire and go through the orange. These are sometimes a little bit tricky. And then same thing with the pine cones, bring the 2 wires together, give them a twist. And then exactly the same process. And then the final one, I'm going to pop here. And there we go, your very own finished Christmas door wreath.